Hey, so this video is to help you guys out with the RSS2211 final PASE when I'm not around. This session I have open here, you should be able to find in the Documents folder on Studio B. The folder should read RSS2211 final PASE session. When you open it up, you'll have this inside of it, a acoustic DI recording, just a single waveform. What we're going to do is we're going to spit that out to a mini amp in the other room. We'll reamp it there, and then we're going to set up an MS microphone position in front of it and decode it to stereo on the analog console. Alright, so the first thing I have to do is set up my monitors. I am going to do this step by step to help you guys out instead of filling up my I/O all at once. So the first thing I need is my mains set up, and I'm going to put those on 1516, like so. Okay, we just kind of handy that we have this acoustic DI here because I can just route it to the mains, and that way once I have them patched I can listen to see if I'm actually getting my sound. So next I'm going to patch 1516 here. That's Pro Tools Outputs 1516, and just like the midterm practical, we're going to insert it on the stereo bus fader of the Yamaha. Okay, so there it is inserted. I'm going to patch the speakers now. So that's Y-mon out L and R. Just going to speaker input L and R. Just like so. Okay, and now I have to make sure that I hit the PFL on there so it actually gets to the monitors. Alrighty, so if I just go ahead and play this DI recording now, I can see that I'm getting meter. If I turn up the monitors, I can hear it. Okay, great. Next step, I have to actually send that signal out to a DI for reamping. So, I'm now going to create a mono output for my reamp. Okay. So now I'm going to assign my output on this channel as that reamp instead of the mains, now that we're sure the monitoring is working. So I first have to make sure that I attenuate that signal in the analog realm before I send it to the reverse passive DI. So I've got it coming out of Pro Tools Out 8, that's right here, and I'm just going to insert return it to channel 8. That means that right here, I can turn channel 8 on and set it to a quiet level. I usually start at -30, and then, you know, might want it a bit louder, a bit quieter, it all depends. Just listen to the way that your amp is saturating once you get it there. But always start off nice and quiet so you're not sending a hot signal to the mini amp. Okay, now that I have a good quiet level, I'm going to take direct line output 8, and I'm going to patch it to mic panel A8. Great. So now if I go over to the ISO booth, you can see that I have XLR8 connected to a passive DI in reverse. That means that the input is really this output right here because it's in reverse. We had a ground loop hum going on, so I just grounded it, only switch I have in. And then on the other side, you can see that I've got a TS cable coming from the input, which is really the output because it's in reverse, connecting to the mini amp. So at this point, if I hit play in the other room, I should be hearing a signal come out of the mini amp. So let me just try that out now. I'm going to hit play and see if I do. And it sounds like I do. Okay, good. Alrighty, so at this point, you know, you can set the tone any way you'd like on this amp. You're not going to be marked for the quality of the sound just yet. It's only second quarter, as long as you understand how to route everything. So here, you see I've got an MS position already set up. You're going to have to actually put the mics into this position on the day of. They will be on stands with cables, but you'll have to put them into this position. Here is my mid microphone on mic panel A1. It's a cardioid pointing at the source. And then my side is a bidirectional condenser just on top of it at a 90-degree angle, recording the sides on mic panel A2. Okay, now if you're using these AKG mics, you're going to need to actually patch them to some preamps and provide some phantom power to them before you can switch the polar patterns. If you're using any other microphone, there should be physical switches on them. So now that I've got my MS in place, I'm going to record those two signals. I'm going to patch mic panel A1 and 2 through a couple of C24 preamps, and then I'm going to take their outputs and connect them on over to Pro Tools. That way I can get them upstream to my DAW, as well as providing some phantom power. So let me just patch that real quick. Okay, there we are. I got them patched. I also just kind of color-coded everything for you guys. So the red cables are the microphones. The black cable is the reamp, or the black cables, and the green cables are for the monitoring section. So now that I have the mics patched properly, I can come over to the C24 here and set those two channels to mic level, and then provide some phantom power to both of them. Great. I can go ahead and set my gains now. And now that I'm actually feeding phantom power to the 414s, if that's what you're using, those mics in there, I can go in there now and actually set their polar patterns. All right, so I now need to make 2 inputs and 2 audio channels in Pro Tools to receive those mics. Okay, here's my first 2 mono inputs for the session. That's to record my 2 mics. So I'm just going to go OK. And then I'm going to go Shift-Command-N and create 2 mono audio tracks. Great, so they're coming in on input 1 and 2. Right now they're just going to the mains. I'm going to keep it that way until I'm done getting a good meter, just so I can hear what I'm doing. I'm going to call the first channel M for mid, and the second channel is going to be S for side. All right, there they are. So I'm going to go ahead and hit I. It's very important that you use the input monitor for this, because I have to actually hit play to have that DI waveform go to the amp, and thus I have to make sure I'm on input monitor if I expect to hear anything or see a meter on M&S, since it'll be in play mode. So I'm just going to set it up as a loop. And now I'm going to make sure I'm getting a half decent meter off of both those microphones. All right, next step is to now make sure I send those 2 channels back out of Pro Tools and then send them to the console. I want the mid to be on channel 1, and I want my sides to be on these 2 channels. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of patching and using the mult for that. First step is to make 2 new mono outputs. Okay, there's 2 new mono outputs out of 1 and 2. I'm just going to go ahead and assign those as the outputs for my MMIS channels. Now that I'm sure that I had those coming through just fine, they're ready to go to output 1 and 2, and I'm ready to patch them over here. So my mid, it's coming out of output 1, and it's just going to go straight back to the Yamaha console. Now we're going to have to pass through mic preamp input for this. The main reason for that is that we're going to need to actually be able to use the polarity flip, and if we use the insert return, they're not available as an option on the console. So we're actually going to have to go through the mic preamp input and then pad it and set it to unity gain. So there's the mid getting where it's supposed to. Here's the side channel coming out of 2, and it needs to be copied. So I'm going to send it to mult B. I'll just use my last red cable, so this one's going to have to be red and black. Sorry guys. So there's mult B 2 and 3. I've got 2 sides now. Here's my first side going to mic preamp input 2, and my other side going to mic preamp input 3. Okay, great. So like I was saying, over here I got to make sure that I pad all 3 channels set them to unity gain. That's again for a refresher, just making sure that the gains are right around the little white arrow. And I have to make sure that channel 3 has its polarity flipped as well, because that's going to be our copy. Okay, so if I turn on all 3 of these channels, I should be ready to be seeing a signal on them, which I am. I'm seeing them come downstream from that M&S signal. Okay, the only problem is I'm not hearing anything yet. So we need to get these 3 channels back to Pro Tools to be able to monitor them. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to assign them to groups 3 and 4. I'm using group 3 and 4 to keep it linear with the Pro Tools input, which will also be 3 and 4. And then I'm going to use the group insert send on the patch bay. Okay, so here's group insert send 3 and 4. And that's going to Pro Tools input 3 and 4. So now I have to make sure I have a new stereo input to receive that, and a new stereo track to be able to assign it to. So I'm going to go to Setup, I/O. I'm going to make myself a new stereo input on 3 and 4. I'm going to call it Decode. Okay, so here's my stereo audio track I'm going to create to receive that. You can see Decode 3 and 4 is coming in, and this should be the only track that is now going to the mains. It's the only thing that we should be monitoring, our final decode. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Decode Print, and I'm going to put it on I, Input Monitor as well, so we can hear things pass through it until we're ready to record. So at this point, when I hit play, I should be still seeing meters here at the console, which I am. But this time I should actually be hearing stuff when I turn up the monitors. Okay, great. So now we're sure that we're actually monitoring our analog console. So at this point I can turn off my mid, and the first thing I want to do is calibrate my sides. So I'm going to make sure that these 2 channels are in mono, but don't forget that channel 3 has its polarity flipped. So if I set the levels just right between these 2 channels, it should actually cancel itself out. So it's going to wiggle one of the faders until it does. You may want to set up a loop for this while you do it. Okay, there we go. That appears to be canceled out. So once it goes completely silent, I should be able to flip the pans out left and right and hear them come back. So now finally, I'm just going to turn up the mid until I like my stereo image. You should end up with something like that, a stereo image changing a bit on the left and the right. I can go ahead and process this a little bit differently on the mid and the side. EQ the mid different than the side. So you can push in the EQ and then go ahead, set the EQ levels however you would like. Finally, it asks you to compress the mid channel, but not the sides. So our mid channel is on channel 1 there. I'm just going to patch the insert send from 1 over to the ACP88. I'm going to use the second channel on the ACP88 just because we've been having meter problems with the first channel this quarter. Meter doesn't always light up. So there it is going into channel 2 of the ACP88. And here it is coming back out to the insert return on channel 1. And then when I come over here, should be able to change the makeup gain. And if the volume changes out of the speakers, well, that means that it's obviously part of the inline signal. Okay, you get the idea. Go ahead and compress this signal however you would like. Use the cracking the compressor settings. And then make sure you bring back the sides so you have a whole stereo image. Okay, once you have things processed the way you want, it's time to record our signals. So we can just take them off of input monitor, put them into record arm, and then just hit record and play. going to turn off the speakers for this print because I've heard it enough. But there you go. You can see that it is in real time sending this waveform to that amp as a reamp. Then those two mics are recording an M&S signal, which is being sent to the analog console, which is then being returned to the decode print channel, where our final stereo image is printing with all the effects and decoding. Okay, that's the end of the final PASE for 2211. Good luck, guys.